Welcome back to Monitors Unboxed. Today we're looking at Gigabyte's 27-inch 4K 240Hz QD-OLED gaming monitor, the MO27U2. This panel first debuted earlier this year in products like the ASUS PG27U CDM and MSI 272URX, so it'll be interesting to see Gigabyte's take on it. I'm expecting to see performance that's pretty similar to the others, so it could come down to a battle of features and pricing. Gigabyte's M-series OLEDs are using a new design that's been updated for 2025. Instead of using a wide V-shaped base, the MO27U2 is equipped with a small, six-sided metal plate. It's a remarkably thin piece of solid metal, but it retains a lot of stability and has two clear benefits. The smaller footprint occupies less desk space, so you can use a broader range of keyboard orientations with this monitor, and the flat profile means you can put things on top of the base, further maximizing usable space.
Today's sponsor spot is brought to you by Ugreen and their brand new Nexode 300-watt power bank. This beefy unit can deliver 140 watts of charging power via a single USB-C port with bidirectional capability, allowing for a full recharge of the power bank itself in just an hour and a half. With 5 ports in total, this power bank can charge 5 devices simultaneously, and with a massive 48,000 mAh capacity, you can fully recharge an iPhone 15 Pro over 9 times. The Nexode 300-watt also features a built-in LED light with 3 modes, including SOS, making it perfect for weekend camping trips. With a smart LED display that provides real-time data on remaining power and current usage, and automotive-grade lithium iron phosphate batteries that retain over 80% capacity after 3,000 cycles, you can rely on this power bank for all of your charging needs. So for more information on the Nexode 300 power bank and the rest of Ugreen's portable lineup, please check the links in the video description.
The stand pillar is a metal tube with a relatively small diameter, but again it's very sturdy and still allows for a wide range of ergonomic adjustment, including height, tilt, swivel and pivot. The maximum height on offer is acceptable without being outstanding. I think the whole stand assembly, the base, the pillar and everything looks excellent, and it's a big upgrade on previous Gigabyte monitors. The screen section itself is a variation of the typical central box design we see across a lot of OLEDs. The front is dominated by the panel with its glossy glass-like finish, and the chin features a stealthy Gigabyte logo. The rear includes a plastic box which houses all the components, out from which the thin OLED panel extends. Gigabyte's design uses a range of different lines and vents and stuff which looks fine enough. The entire design is either black or grey, giving it a neutral appearance that slots in well with most setups. There's no RGB LED lighting here. The port selection is okay. We're seeing one DisplayPort 1.4 with DSC, 2 HDMI 2.1 48 gigabits per second ports with DSC, and a USB-C supporting DP-Alt mode and 18 watts of power delivery. There's also a 2-port USB 5 gigabits per second hub and a KVM switch. Compared with some other 4K 240Hz QD OLEDs, the main emission here is DisplayPort 2.1 UHBR20, with Gigabyte opting to use DP 1.4 with DSC instead. As I've discussed in previous reviews and content on the channel, this downgrade in bandwidth has no real-world impact and is typically a good cost-saving measure. I still see lots of comments from people thinking they need DisplayPort 2.1 on these products, but the reality is you don't. The OSD on this monitor is controlled through a directional toggle and includes lots of features like separate display modes, lots of gaming-specific features like crosshairs, shadow boosting, FPS counters, and other information readouts, and a good amount of OLED care features as well. It's a fast and easy-to-navigate interface, which is always nice to see. What you're getting is basically the same as other Gigabyte monitors from the last few years. While that's okay in a vacuum, there is strong feature competition from other displays using the same panel. ASUS, for example, offer a proximity sensor to detect when you're sitting in front of the display, allowing the panel to switch off automatically when you leave. There's no alternative to that on this panel. We're not getting any anti-flicker tech, black frame insertion, or Dolby Vision support either. What's a little unusual is that Gigabyte's website do advertise a black frame insertion feature, ultra clear, and an anti-flicker feature, with a suggestion in fine print that you need to update to the latest firmware to access these features. Except, I did that to the latest firmware available as of September 11, which is version F02 from late August, and neither of these features are available in that firmware, so possibly it's coming later, but I reckon Gigabyte should probably hold off on the website updates until the firmware is actually available. Texture rendering on the MO27U2 is identical to other 27-inch 4K QD OLEDs, as they all use the same panel. This means we're getting the same excellent text quality thanks to a high 166 ppi pixel density. This is a noticeable increase in sharpness and clarity compared to 1440p QD-OLED panels at the same size, with fewer visible artifacts despite the continued use of a triangle RGB subpixel structure. In fact, I really couldn't see much color fringing around text on this panel at all, so it delivers results essentially identical to a 27-inch 4K LCD. This QD-OLED panel is glossy, which is a double-edged sword. The main benefit is increased sharpness and clarity compared to matte coatings, with no coating grain or light diffusion that can impact apparent contrast. The downsides are mirror-like reflections, which are well managed on this panel, and QD-OLED ambient light reflection. In brighter environments, when displaying black, QD-OLED panels can appear grey instead, as ambient light activates the quantum dot layer. This reduces black depth in well-lit rooms and hurts the black level advantage you get from OLED, but the issue can be mitigated by ensuring your room is dimly lit with light sources behind the display. Whether QD-OLED glossy is the right choice for you is dependent on your personal preferences and usage conditions. OLED panels of all varieties are also susceptible to permanent burn-in. You won't get burn-in while playing games or watching videos, but the panel will burn in over time when displaying static content for long periods. This makes OLED less well suited for productivity uses where you'll be looking at static desktop apps all day. And you can check out our ongoing OLED burn-in series to see how real-world productivity use affects burn-in. Gigabyte offer an industry-standard 3-year burn-in warranty. Response time performance is excellent on this QD-OLED monitor as it is for other OLED displays we've tested so far. OLED offers lightning fast response times around the 0.3 millisecond mark at all refresh rates, and performance doesn't change at lower refreshes, one of the many benefits of OLED for variable refresh rate gamers. This results in a single overdrive mode experience where you don't need to adjust settings depending on the refresh rate you're using. There is effectively no difference in response time performance between this QD-OLED and other OLED monitors. OLEDs are much faster than even the fastest LCDs I've tested, and this is true whether we look at the best performance or average performance across the refresh rate range. Not only are OLEDs fast, they also have no overshoot artifacts, which can be an issue with some LCD models. When viewing cumulative deviation results, we can see that OLEDs get much closer to ideal response time behavior, and in most cases offer performance an order of magnitude better in this metric than LCDs. In practice, this leads to around a 1.5 times advantage in clarity at a given refresh rate, so 240Hz QD-OLEDs offer a similar experience to 360Hz LCDs. Aside from comparisons to LCDs, the main thing you need to be aware of when buying an OLED for motion is that clarity on these panels is directly tied to refresh rate. At the same refresh rate, two different OLED panels will look basically the same, so the actual refresh rate you'll be using is more important than the maximum refresh rate of the monitor. So far, all of these 27-inch 4K QD-OLEDs have been 240Hz, but in the event we start seeing lower refresh rate alternatives, it's important to keep this in mind. Input latency is excellent, offering a sub 1 millisecond processing delay in both the SDR and HDR modes. Combined with fast response times and a decent refresh rate, this OLED feels very snappy to use. The only way to achieve better latency is through a higher refresh rate model, which at this point would require downgrading to a lower resolution. Power consumption is no different to the other models, with this 27-inch 4K QD-OLED panel consuming around 75 watts to display a full white 200-nit image. This is a worst-case scenario for QD-OLEDs, with typical power consumption while gaming being a fair bit lower. About 40 watts is normal for mid-APL gaming, which is still higher than most LCDs, but not a crazy figure. All QD-OLEDs that we've tested so far offer a similar color space. In the case of the MO27U2, we're looking at 98% DCI-P3 coverage, as well as 96% Adobe RGB coverage. In total, I saw 76.6% coverage of Rec 2020, which is slightly lower than some of the other QD-OLED panel formats I've tested, but in the same range as the other 27-inch models. Factory calibration in the default configuration is nothing special. My unit had somewhat of a red tint out of the box, but nothing too outrageous, as well as close to flat 2.2 gamma. This led to a Delta E ITP average of 10, which is below average among gaming monitors. On top of this, we get the usual oversaturation issues in SDR content. Compared to other products, the MO27U2 could be better calibrated for grayscale, but it's not an unusual result, as it's quite similar to the XG27UC DMG. The best of the bunch here is Dell's AW2725Q. Color Checker shows a similar sort of result. Using Windows 11 auto color management with this monitor works reasonably well and improves accuracy compared to the default experience. This configuration gives you full access over all OSD settings, whereas the built-in sRGB mode locks various controls. The monitor maintains full sRGB gamut coverage when ACM is used, however grayscale is not improved in this mode, which is the main weakness by default. Still, it does improve saturation and color checker performance. The more accurate configuration that Gigabyte offers is the built-in sRGB mode. Grayscale performance is better in this mode, though still slightly tinted red. Decent gamut clamping brings down the Delta E average, but not to the point of being fully factory calibrated in my opinion. Oversaturation is resolved though, so it's still worth considering. Compared to other monitors, this is one of the weaker Gigabyte sRGB modes, which as you can see from the MO27U2 and M32UP can be excellent at times. Color checker performance in this configuration is also a bit below average, though in line with Dell's AW2725Q. The Asus variants of this monitor offer a better experience along with the MSI272URX. A full calibration can improve performance further, and we use CalMan for that. This panel is well suited to multiple color spaces, including DCI P3 when fully calibrated. Peak SDR brightness is the same as other 27-inch 240Hz QD-OLEDs at approximately 250 nits. Gigabyte do not use an automatic brightness limiter in the SDR mode, so brightness is a consistent 250 nits in all situations. This level of brightness should be fine for most people, though of course it's not as strong as LCDs for those who use their monitor in a bright room. Minimum brightness of 20 nits is excellent for use in darker rooms. I was very impressed with the viewing angles of this panel. They are very wide, which makes it easy to view the display, even at quite extreme angles. It really looks excellent. Uniformity was also very good with my unit, nice and uniform viewing full white, and no dirty screen effect viewing dark grays. This is keeping QD-OLED in the leadership position for display uniformity among OLEDs. The MO27U2 is well suited to HDR from a hardware perspective. OLED panels including QD-OLED directly emit light and have individual pixel control, which makes them ideal for displaying HDR content. This feature allows each pixel to independently vary from fully switching off to displaying bright highlights, giving us deep, zero-level blacks and per-pixel control. The level of control OLEDs provide minimizes blooming in high-contrast scenarios and allows for a clean distinction between bright and dark areas that are close together. Compared to LCDs with a multi-zone backlight, OLEDs have far fewer ugly illumination artifacts, which are most noticeable when displaying difficult scenarios like star fields or subtitles, and there are no zone transitions as bright objects move around the display. With per-pixel control as its main advantage, OLEDs are best at displaying high-contrast scenes with rich shadow detail, which is a key aspect to a good HDR presentation. Darker content interspersed with dazzling bright highlights brings out the best in OLED displays, as does HDR content with fast motion. For gamers especially, input latency on most OLEDs is low in the HDR mode. The weakness to the HDR presentation on an OLED is overall brightness. While peak brightness can be high in the best cases, full-screen brightness is low, and this limits the punch in bright daytime scenes. LCDs may not have per-pixel control, but zone backlights can simply get significantly brighter in bright scenes. Depending on what you want out of an HDR monitor, your preference could swing more towards LCDs or more towards OLEDs, but typically speaking, OLEDs are a great choice that deliver a fantastic HDR presentation. The MO27U2 has lots of HDR modes controlled through two settings, the picture mode, of which there are 5 options, and the APL stabilize feature in the OLED care menu, which has 3 options. The picture mode largely controls the EOTF roll-off at high brightness, while the APL stabilize setting controls the level of peak brightness. Each picture mode sets an APL stabilize setting by default. In some cases you can manually change it, in other cases APL stabilize is grayed out. Despite having many different configuration options, the actual performance you get boils down to 2 distinct options. Either you can choose the standard True Black 400 mode that we see on other QD-OLEDs, which limits peak brightness to around 450 nits but is typically quite accurate, or you can enable a boosted brightness peak 1000 configuration, which increases peak brightness to 1000 nits, but boosts brightness in brighter scenes to avoid panel dimming, but is also about twice as bright as it should be in darker scenes. These are not unique configurations, we've seen these before on other QD-OLEDs. The best True Black configuration is the default picture mode, which is simply labeled HDR. This mode has excellent EOTF tracking in all situations, no panel dimming, and is capped to just over 450 nits of brightness. If you prefer more gentle roll-off, the HDR Movie mode can provide that. The boosted brightness configuration that makes the most sense is the HDR Peak 1000 mode. While you can get different levels of roll-off in other modes, the Peak 1000 mode is the only one that actually reports peak brightness of 1000 nits to Windows, which is necessary for some games and applications. As you can see from this testing, the HDR Peak 1000 mode does produce 1000 nits of brightness, however in darker content, like a 2% constant APL 18 test, it's far too bright, which hurts scenes that rely on shadows. This is a trade-off to remove panel dimming in brighter scenes. As we can see from the 10% APL 50 test, this mode is very accurate in brighter scenes. While the boosted brightness configuration is a nice option to have in some situations, the MO27U2 lacks a more traditional Peak 1000 mode, which on other monitors offers excellent accuracy in darker scenes and access to 1000 nits of brightness, with the trade-off being panel dimming in brighter scenes. That sort of standard Peak 1000 mode is most suitable for content that is typically darker, like a movie set mostly at night, and on this Gigabyte monitor you just don't get the option to use that mode. This is a bit bizarre to me because older Gigabyte QD-OLEDs like the FO27Q3 do include all 3 configurations, giving users a lot of choice. With so many settings you can change, I'm not sure why Gigabyte decided to remove one of the 3 major configurations, but on the flip side, it's good to see they did add in a mode that changes the peak brightness figure reported to Windows. Peak brightness results are identical to other QD-OLEDs that we've tested. This is just the way this panel type performs, about 260 nits full screen, 480 nits in a 10% window, and around 1000 nits at a 2% window. In real scene brightness, again, the MO27U2 doesn't offer up anything unique. The HDR mode is essentially identical to the display HDR True Black mode on other QD-OLEDs. The Peak 1000 nits mode offers good brightness across these tests in comparison to more traditional Peak 1000 configurations, like is seen on the AW2725Q's option. But the trade-off here is terrible low APL accuracy, essentially over-brightening the image in darker content to avoid dimming brighter scenes. Dark scene calibration in the HDR mode is decent, but terrible in the Peak 1000 mode. Bright scene calibration is good in both modes, as both are optimized to avoid panel dimming. Color match performance is also very good, though again only in the HDR mode, and overall color volume is identical to other QD-OLEDs, surpassing WOLED due to higher color brightness and a wider overall gamut. In the Hype Essentials checklist, Gigabyte do a pretty good job of advertising this monitor, getting many crucial specifications spot on. There is the weirdness with Gigabyte advertising features that aren't available in the latest firmware though, and things like factory calibration and flicker-free are not completely accurate. While it may pass some flicker-free certifications, it's not technically flicker-free, as QD-OLED has a short pulse at each refresh. This causes eye strain for a very small minority of users. I think the name Gigabyte MO27U2 is also pretty good, at least as far as monitor names go. It's not the best and isn't especially memorable, but it's short, easy to search for, and it's reasonably hard to confuse for another product given Gigabyte's current lineup. In the feature support matrix, Gigabyte do offer a decent selection of things here. They offer both USB-C and a KVM switch along with built-in speakers. It's also a passively cooled design. However, there's no Dolby Vision support or black frame insertion, and there's the usual drawbacks to OLED. The Gigabyte MO27U2 is one of those monitors where by itself, this is a great product. The 27-inch 4K QD-OLED panel used here is excellent, fantastic HDR capabilities due to this panel, pretty good HDR performance through Gigabyte's calibration, and you get an overall great gaming experience from fast response times and a high refresh rate. There's a lot to like here and not much that Gigabyte have done wrong. If you end up with this monitor, I think you'll be pretty happy. But up against the competition, a crowded field of other 27-inch 4K QD-OLEDs, the MO27U2 really does nothing to stand out from the crowd. There's no unique, cool feature to this product that would get you to specifically buy it over the others. And performance, while decent, it isn't outstanding. The sRGB mode falls a little short of being well calibrated, brightness is fine but practically identical to other models, and the included HDR modes are, well, they're acceptable, but I would have preferred a normal Peak 1000 mode to the boosted brightness configuration, or ideally just the inclusion of both. It does have things like a USB-C input and KVM switch, which not all models offer, but these aren't unique to the Gigabyte model. You'll find them on the Asus XG27UC DMG, for example. Other stuff this monitor doesn't have: no Dolby Vision support, no proximity sensor. Maybe we're getting black frame insertion via a firmware update, but it's not currently available. The design is pretty good. I like this new aesthetic from Gigabyte, but is that enough to draw me into a purchase? Probably not. The main issue Gigabyte are running into is the price. A product without standout features and with performance that's similar to other options needs to be price competitive, and at $1,000 US that isn't the case. The Dell Alienware AW2725Q is basically the same product for $800 US. There's a few feature differences here and there, but ultimately Dell are offering much better value. The MO27U2 needs to be the same price as the Dell model, or ideally cheaper to get a recommendation. Maybe that will be the case in your region, but even here in Australia, where the MO27U2 is on sale at $1,100 AUD, it still can't match the AW2725Q that's $100 cheaper. The other problem for Gigabyte is that the Asus XG27UC DMG is an overall better product with superior calibration and a better feature set. It's $980 US at the moment, which is slightly cheaper than the Gigabyte model. So if you did want to spend a bit more on a premium version of this 4K QD-OLED panel, going for the Asus ROG Strix model makes much more sense. So ultimately, we're in a position where the MO27U2 lives or dies based on its price. $1,000 US is too much, but with discounts, it could be worth recommending. Keep an eye on the price in your region and make sure to consider all the available options. So anyway, that's it for this review. If you do appreciate our independent testing, then consider subscribing to Monitors Unboxed and supporting us via our Patreon page. Links to that is in the description. Also in the description, you'll find links to check pricing and buy these products. That does support the channel. So if you do end up purchasing this monitor, despite what I've said in this review, and you want to support Hardware Unboxed, Monitors Unboxed, then the links down there do help. So anyway, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.